There's a story that's doing the rounds at the moment, which in the grand scheme of things really shouldn't be that important. But I'm just going to mention it because it's something that crops up a lot in the entertainment industry, both on television and film. And there's a disconnect between those who push the argument that I'm going to address and I think the majority opinion. And I'm with the consensus, the majority opinion, that it's just vacuous criticism. I'm just going to read out the piece. This is from the Metro. It's in other sources as well, but I'm using the Metro. The report's by Robert Oliver. And this is about an actress who appeared on Friends in the 1990s. Actually, it would have been the early 2000s, a later series. She's basically complaining about the lack of diversity. Black actress complaining about the lack of diversity. It's something that's cropped up a lot recently, and Friends has come under particular target by woke people. It's yeah, I mean, well, I'll read out the report and then give my take on this. Friends actress Aisha Tyler has confessed that the series she joined reflected industry attitudes that only white stories sold. One of the most consistently popular sitcoms of its day, Friends, which ran between 1994 and 2004, still has a huge dedicated following to this day. However, since its final episode, it's 20 years ago, in fact 20 years ago this month, the series has received criticism for lacking diversity among its lead cast members despite being set in New York City. At the time, Friends creators attempted to address this problem in the closing season by giving main character Ross Geller a non-white love interest. In fact, Ross had a Chinese girlfriend early on, that's conveniently forgotten. Charlie Wheeler, played by Aisha, now 53, was introduced midway through the ninth season, originally as Joey's girlfriend before her storyline changed. Aisha said David, who eventually became a director on the series, pushed for more non-white characters to star in the series as the show went along. And the report continues. I know that David has said that he really pushed for more diversity in the cast, and I think that's wonderful, she told The Independent in the new interview. But she confessed before her introduction things were different. Friends was also reflective of a whole business that thought that only white stories sold. I mean, that's just been the attitude in Hollywood for a long time. They'd say people won't watch a show with these characters. Now we all know that's not true, but that perspective still persists. Um, she continued, what I liked about Friends was that they just wrote the smart, sexy character and she happened to be black, and they weren't trying to seismically change what the show was. The Archer voice actress went on to say that industry bosses either claimed audiences wouldn't watch shows with black characters or that networks with one black show wouldn't develop another. Aisha starred in Friends for just 9 episodes but became one of the most popular love interests with viewers, with Charlie being present for some of the show's most iconic moments. Chief among them is Charlie's decision to date Ross after breaking up with Joey in season 9 finale. Joey witnesses Charlie and Ross kissing and makes the decision to finally act on his long-held feelings for Rachel. However, once Ross finds out about Joey and Rachel's new friend relationship, he reacts badly, drinking heavily and embarrassing himself after inviting Charlie, Joey and Rachel out for dinner. After leaving Friends following Charlie and Ross's subsequent breakup, Aisha joined CSI Crime Scene Investigation, 24, Archer and Criminal Minds, as well as hosting daytime talk show The Talk. Well, she's obviously done well for herself. This is the thing I find interesting about people who complain and complain about lack of diversity, is the fact that they themselves often tend to do quite well. Um, I'm familiar with those episodes. In fact, I watched them fairly recently. They're quite funny storylines. There's one, for example, where Ross is refused a grant because her boss still has love interest in her. They were quite good storylines. So I remember her character, and no criticism of her as an actress. There were funny plots, but this is just. I think people are fed up of hearing this stuff. A Friends was a very popular show. And I think people resent this kind of retrospective trashing of it because of supposed lack of diversity. Now, a show set in New York City with six, people in their 20s and 30s could have been a little bit more diverse, perhaps. Perhaps realistically, there would have been more black or Asian or Hispanic members. But actually, within the cast, there was some diversity. For example, Joey Tribbiani, Italian American. That's a community that has historically faced discrimination. Monica, Ross, and Rachel are Jewish. Gunther is of German American descent. Um, was there an absence of visible minorities? To some extent, but it wasn't non-existent. The very fact that she was on the show proves that. Like I say, early in Friends, Ross had a Chinese girlfriend. Now, I know that this isn't going to tick woke boxes of accepted diversity. They'll say, "Oh, but it's just they're just side characters, not important." Well, I mean, how many leading minorities, or not minorities, but how many leading non-black characters would there be on the Cosby Show or the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? I'm sure they probably had some whites or Asian or Hispanic characters, but it just looks like hypocrisy to attack a predominantly white show for lack of diversity, but not hold the same standards to predominantly black shows. Um, and Fresh Prince of Bel Air and The Cosby Show were also very successful. So it kind of flies in the face of this argument that she's making that, those shows wouldn't have been successful. Probably there were some industry bosses who had executive misgivings about it, but you're going to get that in any industry. You're going to have disagreements and different points of view. Surely the fact that she was a cast member, albeit only for 9 episodes, but the fact that she was, it kind of seems to me like, well, I got part of my career on the show. I was paid for it, but I'm going to trash it retrospectively. Schwimmer has absolutely kind of flagellated himself in guilt. A few years ago, he came out with an interview where he was talking about who he knew about his white privilege. Well, with all due respect, David Schwimmer, you're a wealthy actor. You don't have the lived experience of poor white people in America. So I think white people who pander to this racist concept are just, they're, I don't have time for it. Marta Kaufman and David Crane, I know Marta Kaufman has actually made donations to black institutions out of her sense of guilt. I mean, this is ridiculous. They're welcome to do with their money whatever they want, but I think Friends fans are tired of this coming up time and time again, and tired of people who probably never watched the show in the first place, frankly, whining about it. The thing about Hollywood's supposed lack of diversity, I can think of many black focused films off the top of my head. There's Selma, 12 Years a Slave, Numbers, that one about NASA. I didn't see it, but that was focused on black employees at NASA. And that's only a few examples. There's many, many other black focused films in the last 20 years, particularly black focused. I mean, black people aren't the only minority in America. There's also Hispanic Americans, there's Asian Americans. I just think that, there's free speech, she's entitled to her opinion, but I think Friends fans are tired of hearing this. It was a hugely popular show. It wasn't perfect. There were some storylines that were flawed. There were a few loopholes and, some plots that didn't entirely add up. It wasn't perfect, but it was a popular show. Hell, look at this. Central Park, you see, the merchandise from Friends, extensive. 20 years on, it remains highly popular. So I think fans of the show are tired of hearing this retrospective bashing of it. And frankly, I think, the cast and the makers need to respect the fans a bit more, not just pander to woke complaints. Um, could it have been slightly more diverse? Perhaps. But really, to conclude that it was there for white supremacists or racists or something is complete nonsense, as some will do. I'm not saying she has said that, but, 30 years on from the show's start, she's just trashing the show that helped her career. And she's apparently done quite well for herself. There's people in this world that have nothing. I just think that this constant whining about diversity, it's like that's the only thing that matters in entertainment. And it's been absolutely hijacked in the entertainment industry. We look at Oscars so white, the premise being that, oh, give me an award because I'm black. That's essentially what the premise of that argument was. Um, America is obviously a diverse country, and it's going to be even more diverse in a big city like the Big Apple. But it is still a majority white country. That's not any sort of supremacist statement. It's just a statement of fact. So if you're arguing that production should reflect that, then if you're really going to be purist about that, it should be the exact proportion, right? So let's say whatever the output of Hollywood films is per year, let's say however many films are made. I don't know what the figure is, but let's say, I don't know, there's 50 films made a year. It's probably a bit less actually, but let's say it's 50. Now let's say, I'm just giving scenarios here, let's say America's, 80% white, bit less, maybe 75%, and it will vary greatly from state to state and so on. But let's say the average, maybe, okay, I'll err on the side of caution and go for an even lower figure. Let's say America's 68% white. Okay, well, that in theory would mean that 68% of actors in Hollywood should be white and in production should be white. But I think what some woke activists want is either all minority casts or to have like an exact sort of, to put that diversity quota and that sort of diversity Olympics ahead of just entertainment for entertainment's sake. I have no problem with diversity. I have no problem with, and I welcome it, but I just have a problem with it being kind of used as the main focus instead of entertainment for entertainment's sake. I mean, does she really think that people watch Friends and it gave them a sense of white supremacy or something? Come off it. It was just a funny show. Um, and it's a double standards as well. Like I say, woke activists and woke actors don't seem to hold the same standards. Like I say, why is she not criticizing the Cosby Show for the lack of Asian American representation? I think it was set in Los Angeles, um, unless I'm mistaken. Well, there's a lot of Asian Americans in California. Where was the Asian Americans on the Cosby Show? So it's just people are tired of it. I really think people are tired of it, and it's one thing I really dislike about the left. The constant, I mean, it's just predictable. And I will say this: last year's Best Picture win, Everything Everywhere All at Once. I watched it. Um, it got all these accolades, like this, avalanche of accolades. I thought it was intriguing. I thought it was, it was okay, but it was a bit. It kind of felt like a vehicle for Michelle Yeoh to promote her career rather than. I just don't think it was that exceptional. But the point I'm making with that is the push for that was, well, it's an Asian-led film, so it better win. We better show we're diverse, and I just think that was the focus. I think there were better films last year than Everything Everywhere All at Once. Um, Crazy Rich Asians. The whole thing with that is, oh, it's an all Asian cast. Let's welcome it. It just shows that entertainment is being pushed with an agenda rather than just, frankly, entertainment for entertainment's sake. Um, I'll leave it there, but I'm one of the majority who's tired of this nonsense. It's just, this is not to speak against diversity. I'm not against diversity. I'm just against diversity for diversity's sake rather than putting the focus on entertainment. If you have, I'll make another point with this before closing this one up, but if you have a historic production, and this is the thing I think people find really galling, that has a particular context, right? So let's say you make a film about D-Day. Chances are you're going to have very few women in that production, unless they're nurses or maybe military secretaries or something like that. But the chances are that's going to be a very predominantly male production. Now, that's not sexist, it's just reality. Um, Another example would be if you have a movie set in, say, 16th century England. In fact, we can give an example: Mary, Queen of Scots, recently, late 2010s. It's going to be a predominantly 99% white setting because the only minorities in Britain at that time, in England at that time, would have been perhaps some Moorish traders in London. Not until Elizabeth I did the slave trade even begin. So where you had diversity, it would have been minimal. It wouldn't have been like today. So injecting 21st century diversity quotas into historic productions just isn't realistic. And I've seen producers and directors say that this is their main focus rather than historical accuracy. I mean, the irony, of course, is if you had a white actor playing a minority role, they'd get absolutely hounded out of the production. So again, there's double standards. But I love Hollywood in many ways. I think there's still a lot of good productions out there, but I do not like the way this woke ideology has interjected itself for quite a while now. And these statements by Aisha Tyler just is another example of it. I think the majority are tired of it. They're tired of hearing. They're tired of being lectured basically by people who've actually had quite a good run in life. They've done well for themselves. They've been successful in the entertainment industry. Because, like I say, often the biggest critics are people who personally have done quite well out of it. Um, so stop complaining. If you're a millionaire actor, you have a pretty good life. Stop complaining. So it's just this constant diversity quotas. There's people who have much harder lives out there who don't have. I just think it's because acting's a difficult industry, and there are struggling white actors as well. So I just think that to kind of trash the industry as being, oh, it's not diverse enough. No matter how much diversity there is, it's still the complaint. I mean, I think it's complaining for complaining's sake, to be quite honest.